Vandalism of Public Monuments and Memorials by Protesters by me, Luke Schneider. So, for some backgrounds, as we all know, throughout history, memorials and monuments have been used as methods of remembrance and honoring those who have come before us and shaped history and our society as it is today. Also, another part of history has been vandalizing and destroying monuments that have been used by certain countries or people. This would be this could be through either wars, rebellions, through protests, as we see in recent history today. They all, in those protests, it's more of an attempt to gain attention towards their idea and the message they're trying to support. In recent history, in very current events, we have seen this trend being followed by the Free Palestine movement. So, my research question is, how are the messages sent by destroying and vandalizing public statues and monuments given a degraded value by the general public? Well, my argument is that rather than remembering the message that the protesters were trying to spread, the general public will focus more on the act of vandalizing a public monument that the protesters committed. This relates to the stimulus materials, first of all, through Of Memory and Our Democracy by 4-star General Colin Powell. In this, Colin Powell emphasized the importance of that memorials hold to him and also his other friends and comrades in the Army. Also, throughout the stimulus materials, there's this overall theme of memory. And in this presentation, I will be talking about how the general public will remember rather the actions that were taken by protesters rather than remembering the message that was trying to be sent by protesters. My first example is the Lincoln Memorial. But first, let's look at who was Abraham Lincoln. So, Abraham Lincoln, as we all know, was the 19th President of the United States. And during his presidency, he is credited to ending slavery with the Emancipation Proclamation, and also he is credited to being the president who saved the Union through his victory in the Civil War. Because of his contributions to the United States' history and its society today, the Lincoln Memorial was constructed in Washington, D.C. in 1914. Now, let's look at the protest. During the Free Gaza protest, protesters spray-painted the steps of the Lincoln Memorial with the message of Free Gaza and also splattered red paint on the steps. This, although it was an attempt to bring positive attention to the movement of Free Palestine, it rather gave negative attention towards their message. These are some images of that protest, and as you can see on the image on the right-hand side, or on your guys' left-hand side, you can see on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, there was red paint on the steps, and also you can see that the Lincoln Memorial had to be closed down for a day, which prevented people from visiting the monument that their tax dollars paid for. Also on the right-hand side, you can see that this message of Free Gaza was attempted to be portrayed, but it has been given a degraded value, and this is said very well by Keith Kane, who was a service member in our country as a sheriff, and his words, "Putting graffiti in national monuments, it's not going to change what's going on over there. I understand you want to protest, but there are other ways to protest." It is important to note that in this quote, Keith Kane doesn't mention the message of Free Gaza at all. Rather, the first thing he notes is the fact that the protesters put graffiti on a national monument. This can be displayed how the public will view this act of vandalism rather than an act of or protest and trying to create something good out of this. So, my second example is the Benjamin Franklin statue, specifically in the University of Pennsylvania. So, let's focus on first, who was Benjamin Franklin? So, Benjamin Franklin is known as a founding father and also great inventor who contributed to the early development of the United States. Also, as a founding father, Benjamin Franklin created the original draft of the Declaration of Independence before it was published. And because of his contributions, a statue was dedicated to him in the University of Pennsylvania in 1896. Now, let's look at the protest. Once again, a Free Gaza protest. During this Free Gaza protest, red paint, once again, was splattered on the statue of Benjamin Franklin. Now, because of this, many are calling for justice of their vandalized statue, such as Noah Rubin, who was the president of the University of Pennsylvania Israel Public Affairs Committee, in which he says, the university must hold the vandals and their supporters accountable. It is very important to note in here that rather than calling these protesters, Noah Rubin calls them vandals, which can symbolize the crossing of that threshold of turning from protesting to vandalism. Now, you may be asking, why do protesters do this? Well, their argument is that statues of some American leaders may offend certain groups of people, and unless the statue offers reconciliation or change for their actions, they should be taken down or be free reign to be vandalized. Well, however, this argument is fallible, as said by Neil McGregor very well. He says that we must keep the mistakes of the United States visible, so we don't repeat history. And in 2020, an executive order was passed by the President of the United States that stated that individuals have the right to peacefully protest for the removal of a monument, but they do not have the right to deface, vandalize, or take down any monument by force. So this means that the vandalism and destruction of monuments is now illegal and is not looked at well by the law. So to find a compromise that includes and recognizes both of these arguments is through education, specifically through plaques. So how we can do this is by placing a plaque in front of a monument to inform the audience of what that person did in their life, whether it be good or bad. And this is a way of preserving that visual reminder aspect that these statues hold to United States citizens. And by keeping these statues standing, citizens and countries can reflect on their own society and point out the flaws that are in their system. So, in conclusion, protesters are vandalizing statues to try to spread a message, or maybe because that statue may be offensive to them. And American leaders who've been those that are known more recently as heroes, American heroes, such as Abraham Lincoln and Benjamin Franklin, have also fallen victim to this. And it is really important to keep our statues standing as a way to preserve history and make sure that we recognize the mistakes the country has made in history. And finally, a solution to this issue could be plaques in front of statues which can educate the public on the mistakes the United States has made, also on the mistakes that person has made, to keep the realism of that person's life still standing. So my sources?
Thank you. Luke, did your research go in a different direction than you originally expected it to go? And if so, how?
So overall, I really try to keep my research towards my centered idea of national monuments. So I didn't have much of a change at all. But when I was researching, I did start looking at other memorials and monuments, not really monuments, memorials such as art shows, where there was protesting, but it didn't really fit into the stimulus materials much. So I decided rather than veering off of my original path, I decided I really had to stick onto that path so I could have a very clear presentation.
Okay, good. And then, so what are the implications of your findings to the community at large?
So by keeping statues standing, they can help the community to recognize the importance of preserving history and monuments while also having the realism of that person's life, so that we do not glorify somebody, but we also make sure that we remember that person's life, whether they did, and so we can learn from either the mistakes they made or expand on the successes that they had.
Thank you.
Thank you.